Going beyond the obvious successes and victories in North Korea and South Korea, with Trump being credited, even by the president of South Korea, with those peace negotiations, we see Trump's strategy on taking ISIS is working as well, and ISIS is declining in the Middle East and the East at quite a rapid rate. And as the decline continues in the East, ISIS and Islamists generally are looking for new ways to cause damage and advance their cause. And of course, that includes infiltrating the West. And there's an article here from The Guardian. I seem to be reporting on The Guardian quite a lot recently. I should maybe rethink that. But it's a good piece. They say, ISIS trying to foment a wave of migration to Europe, says UN officials. So let me just read you the basics of the story. Islamic State commanders fleeing Syria are conspiring with extremist groups in Africa to foment and infiltrate a new migration wave destined for Europe, the head of the UN World Food Programme has said. Now, of course, if you dare say anything like this on British news or to British politicians, they just shrug you off as insane. I remember when I was on Channel 4 last year for that that sort of shock jock thing that I did where I told that woman taking a Syrian refugee, I hope you don't get raped. I remember the host, Jon Snow, turned to me afterwards and he said, "Have you ever been to Syria? It's such a civilized place." And I told him, yes, I'm sure it is. But you and I know very well that most of these Syrian refugees are not Syrian. So, you know, there's total denial about facts by the media and the press. And coming from a UN World Food Programme official, I mean, how can we deny this as truth? Clearly, it is true. David Beasley, a former Republican governor of South Carolina, said Europe needed to wake up to the extremist strategy in the Sahel region. Those forced out of Syria were uniting with local terrorist groups to use a lack of food as both a recruitment tool and a vehicle to push millions of Africans towards Europe. This is astonishing, isn't it? I mean, these are the tactics that ISIS use. Take the vulnerable, take the weak, and convert them and radicalize them. And frankly, people will do almost anything for food. It also goes on to say, what we are picking up is that they are partnering with extremist groups like Boko Haram and Al-Qaeda to divvy up territory and resources and to continue to infiltrate and destabilize in the hope of creating migration into Europe where they can infiltrate and cause chaos. And it will work. This will work. Millions of people have been accepted with open arms into Europe. And I would like to think that it's the naivety and the good nature of the Europeans that's allowed that to happen. But really, it's not the good nature, is it? It's leaders willfully destroying and willingly destroying nations. Angela Merkel, case in point. In the UK, last year in 2017, more than 8,000 refugees arrived in the UK under the Syrian Refugee Resettlement Scheme. But who knows where they came from? Seriously, who knows? We don't know. Most of these people speak in different dialects. You know, it's been said by the UN over and over again that these people aren't even from Syria. But the plan from the government is to take in 20,000 Syrians by 2020. So when you hear reports that ISIS, Boko Haram, Al-Qaeda, all these people, they're becoming more weaker in the Middle East, and then they're going to start migrating to the UK and Europe, it makes sense, it's going to happen. But what we need to remember is, and what we need to remind people is, in the UK, 900 Syrians have been arrested in England and Wales for crimes that include rape and child abuse. It's wicked. It's truly, truly wicked. And you know, it's amazing. There's a point I want to make today. And my point is about enemies who tell you what they're going to do. ISIS is obviously not very good at keeping this secret. But this isn't the first time we've had the heads up about infiltration. The first time we've had the heads up about attacks on our country from Islamists. It happens all the time. And in fact, one of the big examples of the West being given a heads up on Islamist infiltration is called the Explanatory Memorandum. I want to just briefly introduce you to this today. So this is a book from the Center for Security Policy run by Frank Gaffney. And I won't read you the whole thing. It is available online, I believe. And I want to explain to you what the Explanatory Memorandum is. And I'll do that by reading you a brief introduction to this book. And then I want to explain to you why the whole settlement issue is important. So here's the beginning of the book. It says, In August of 2004, an alert Maryland Transportation Authority police officer observed a woman wearing traditional Islamic garb videotaping the support structures of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge and conducted a traffic stop. The driver of the vehicle was identified as Ismail El-Barras and detained on an outstanding material witness warrant issued in Chicago, Illinois in connection with fundraising for Hamas. The FBI's Washington field office subsequently executed a search warrant on El-Barras' residence in Annandale, Virginia. In the basement of his home, a hidden sub-basement was found. The contents of the sub-basement proved to be the archives of the Muslim Brotherhood in North America. Among the 80 banker boxes worth of documents discovered there were papers that confirmed what investigators and counterterrorism experts had long suspected and contended about the myriad of Muslim American groups in the United States. Nearly all of them are controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood. Therefore, in accordance with the supremacist Islamic doctrine known as Sharia, such groups are hostile to this country, its constitution and freedoms. The documents make clear the group's sole objectives are to implement Islamic law in America in furtherance of re-establishing one global caliphate. One of the most important of these documents made public to date was entered into evidence during the Holy Land Foundation trial. It amounted to the Muslim Brotherhood's strategic plan for the United States and was entitled an explanatory memorandum on the general strategic goal for the group in North America. Now, this was a document that was written in 1991 by the board of directors of the Muslim Brotherhood, and it outlined their intention to infiltrate the West. And the reason why I mention this is because in the explanatory memorandum, it talks quite heavily about settlement. And the idea of settlement is the idea of settling in the West and allowing these tentacles of their religion, or not religion, but their political doctrine, entering the Western mind, the Western system, the Western politicking. And section 3 in this book, which I thought was important, was on the concept of settlement. And it mentions that the term settlement was used in the group's dictionary and documents with various meanings in spite of the fact that everyone meant one thing with it. So they've broken it down into 4 words: settlement, establishment, stability, and enablement. Settlement is that Islam and its movement become a part of the homeland that it lives in after they've migrated and settled in the land. Establishment, that Islam turns into firmly rooted organizations on whose basis civilization, structure, and testimony are built. Stability, that Islam is stable in the land on which its people move. And finally, enablement, that Islam is enabled within the souls, minds, and the lives of the people of the country in which it moves. We've been told before what the agenda of Islamists are in the West, in the explanatory memorandum. We are finding out again the intention of Islamists from the East moving to the West. We know what their goals are, we know what their aims are, and we are in the unique position to say that we know how they intend to achieve these goals. And what are we going to do? We're going to welcome them in with open arms. Catch up with all the Rebel stories on our brand new app, which you can download now from the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store.